It sounds like you don't like the word actually NDE. Why?
Well, let's see how I can answer that. For starters, the word NDE came about by 1970 something by Raymond Moody, who studied near-death experiences at large. He came out with that term, and the reason why I don't like that term is because, I mean, if you see how it's worded, for instance, near-death experiences. In other words, you haven't died yet. You were close to death, but you were not death. And you had an experience, which I don't know what it is. I cannot pinpoint it, but definitely you didn't die. You see, that's what I don't like about near-death experiences. In fact, I learned about near-death experience years after I had my own spiritual experience when I died in 1979. The word near-death experience had been used so... now it's so broad. I mean, the other day, for instance, I was looking at this TV program and they were mentioning the word near-death experience. So I tune in to find out that a near-death experience is what they made reference to, the fact that they almost had a car accident but nothing happened. It just they almost had a car accident. That by itself, they put it as a near-death experience. But to answer your question, a near-death experience had nothing to do with the experience itself. The experience that an NDEer goes through is having seen the spiritual world, not understanding what it had been perceived, and then brought it to memory. And because it is so broad, because the experience, the perception, the visualization, the understanding is so all over the place, I don't like the term near-death experience just because a near-death experience had nothing to do with the experience itself. That's exactly the reason why in my book I had portrayed, and I made available to everyone that reads the book, a graphic explaining what a near-death experience truly is, which is no different than a spiritual experience by itself. You see?
You claimed you died in 1979 when you had your first car accident. What's the difference between dying and an NDE? If there is actually a difference between dying and a near-death experience.
Yes, there is.
What would that be?
In essence, there is. And basically, that's the reason why when I answer your questions, I address the fact that I died. The answer is yes and no. What happened to me in 1979 was an experience that I can claim to be a fact. I died, period. And the fact that it cannot be termed as a near-death experience just because of the fact that I died, that makes it different. In the sense that nobody can argue with me saying, well, it could have been a hallucination or a dream or a mental breakdown somewhere. No, I died. And there is a difference. Not in the term of near-death experience, how people portray it, but there's a big difference between having died, being physically dead, and having an experience that can be questioned. Now, how do I know that I died if I wasn't there in the first place? Well, very simple. When I began to ask myself all these questions throughout those years, and after having gone through the year 2000 mystical, spiritual, transcendental experience that I had, I began to question myself many, many times. And I wanted to double check and make sure that indeed that's what happened. Now remember, we're dating back to 1979. There was no technologies. There were not cell phones around. Cameras was only coming from the news. I mean, it must have been, it has to be an incident so great and disproportionate that the news media comes in, the newspaper and all. None of that happened here in this case. But yes, I do have one witness, and is the friend that was with me in the car. When I was T-boned, I was T-boned from this side. And to give you an extent of the magnitude of the car accident, the driver's door ended up right at the center console, and I was right in there. Because I was T-boned, my friend was next to me in the passenger seat, and he of course survived the accident. But when I saw him last time, about 2 years ago, after my 2011 experience, I went to him and I asked him, did I die? And he stood up for quite some time, and he asked me to go in the very back of the backyard to follow him. And I did. He lighted up a cigarette and he told me, Frank, well, Frank is not my actual nickname, but let's say that he said Frank. He said, Frank, you were dead. You were dead. You fell in my lap and you were dead. So I asked him, why, if that's so, why didn't you tell me? And his reply was very simple and very honest, and I could see it in his expression. And he said, Frank, when I was taken to the hospital and I asked for you, they told me you were alive. So how could I? How could I? You see, that's my witness. My dear friend that was next to me, and he saw me, and he knew I was dead. Did I ask if he took my pulse or anything like that? No, I didn't, because I didn't have to. I knew exactly what it meant. I knew exactly how it felt. And then I added up all the different angles that I was compiling from different sources, and I was able to put it all together. The car accident took place at about 4 p.m. When I came from the other side, it was already dusk, meaning that it was probably about 6 p.m. They claimed that I was in the car, trapped, and nobody dared to touch me because I was convulsing heavily, and no one dared to touch me. Now the convulsion took place after my friend was taken out of the car. He was taken to the hospital, but when he was removed from the car and I was laying down there, I don't know if I suddenly start convulsing or not, because that was not a specific question that you ask to someone that tells you that no one dared to touch you because you were convulsing. You see? And after all that time that I was convulsing, suddenly I stopped and someone dared to take me out of the car. At that time, it must be the time when I start perceiving and receiving and feeling that horrendous pain in my body when I was being removed. And the next thing I know, when I opened my eyes, I saw the edge of the windshield of my car very close to me as I was taken out of the car. Of course, I was taken out from the passenger's side. So I had enough consciousness to see that that frame in the car and knowing where I was. And then I was told that I was being laid on the floor, waiting for someone to take me to the hospital, and well, that's the end of that part of the deal. But when it comes to your questions, if there's a difference between near death and actually being dead, well, that difference by itself is the fact that I died, period, and I came back, you see?
During your first NDE, the one that we talked about 1979, your car accident, you were explaining to me that you felt this peace and love that cannot be described. Can you today describe how that love and that peace felt?
Wow, yeah. Over 35 years had gone by. Yes, I can describe it, but no, I don't want to describe it. And I'm going to tell you why. The moment I give that peace and that love a description, I will be taking that from the spiritual side to the physical plane of reality. I will have to give an analogy, I will have to give a point of reference, I will have to change the words. And that by itself is a disservice. Let me put it this way, this is something that you have to experience yourself in order to fully understand. It's like fear. Describe fear to me. The fear that you're going to be describing have to be based on something that you can relate to, so you can create an image and give a description of that fear. But unless I go through that fear myself, it will be very hard to put it at the same level that you're putting fear. You see? So let me put it this way. What I've learned through 35 years, and basically what I've learned through those 35 years, actually they were learned in the past couple of years. Because it wasn't until 2011 that I was granted access to higher truth. So I could understand the pattern that followed my original near-death experience. Like for example, my near-death experience, so to speak, in 1979, then a shared near-death experience that I have with my dying mother in the year 2000, then in 2002 I had a near-death experience myself, and in 2011 and in 2010 an anteroom to the 2011 experience. But all those instances were not recognized by my intellectual brain. Those events did happen, but they were not part of me because I was so engulfed in this physical plane of reality that I believe the doctor, I believe the hospital, I believe here, I believe that one. But once higher truth kicked in, I understood, because I had to relive the experience and saying, wait a minute, this happened and I had this experience and it felt like that, but I didn't get it, and so on. So going to love and peace, now I do understand what that love and peace actually is. But trying to describe it, I will be limiting it to the extent of regular, normal understanding. But let's see if we can help each other to get this out of the way. The problem with peace is that whenever you are at peace, you're always troubled somehow for any distraction, any physical, emotional, perceptive idea, preconception, or expression through the senses. That peace that was felt back then had nothing to do with the physical world, had nothing to do with emotions, it had nothing to do with the senses, had nothing to do with the convoluted world of the physical plane of reality. It is an experience that was experienced in another realm that cannot be placed at the very same level as this physical plane. The most you can do is enter into a meditative stage where you can be centered into not being disturbed by your surroundings. But for that, it takes a lot of energy and a lot of practice to achieve. It is attainable, yes. You can feel that very same peace, but not at the same level. And when it comes to love, love is easier to explain. Even unconditional love is conditioned. Even the unconditional love that you can feel for a father, a mother, a son, or a loved one, still conditioned to a certain extent. Then you have love that had been used to kill people in the name of love, betray people in the name of love to someone else. It had been tainted so badly that even the word love, when you tell me about love, me having the understanding of a love that had nothing to do with this earth plane, that by itself becomes troublesome if I try to explain to you what love is. You see, that difficult. And it's not easy living a life knowing that that type of love and that what is peace does exist. But it is so hard to fully comprehend from this plane of reality that we live. So that's why I said yes and no. Yes, I know where it comes from because of the so many years trying to understand until I finally got it. But I still cannot explain it because there's no way. Only someone that have gone through the experience can understand the true word. And I must add, unfortunately, many of those who have had those near-death experience and come back and recall that love, they just put that love together with the physical love on earth, probably thinking that people will understand it as it is, and as people understand it, they keep spreading the word, that is love, that is love, that is love. But in essence, that is probably not the love that you think that does exist on earth. Did I answer your question? I hope I did.
I love the way that you explain how perception works. I really enjoyed that part of the book. It was an aha moment for me. Yeah. So how did you come up with that idea about perception?
Well, perception. You have to understand that what I wanted to do, and the reason why I'm here today and every day doing this, is because I want to people understand how perception is the culprit or the reason or the element that is at stake here when it comes to understanding what a near-death experience truly is. Perception is very subjective. And you can perceive something in one way or something in other. But what I wanted to address when I try to explain how perception works is by making people understand that the perception that you receive comes from a plane of reality where the physical body does not exist, and that everything moves through the intent. Now, the intent is not a language, but people need to understand through a language. I mean, I can be giving you all my, if I could give you all my thoughts and transfer you that database in your head, I will not have to use words at all. But I am limited with a physical body and a language. Check this out. I mean, English is not even my primary language. So imagine how frustrating it is for me trying to deliver the message. It is the intent, the one that we perceive. We put it into thoughts, and then we translate into words. And trust me, I've gone through this many times. I have used words that I understand that they are appropriate, especially in this, my second language. And then it turns out that that word that I use is not applicable to what you understand. And then you are going to misunderstand my words and probably make judgment of my words. So words are very limited, and they don't serve well when you're trying to explain what took place under a near-death experience. If we could understand that perception is not even a language, and I can make reference to as of if it would be like a computer, then you probably will understand, because no one here can understand. If I give you a list of zeros and one, you will have no idea what that means. But those zeros and ones have been put there because of an original intent. And that intent is to create an image in the computer so you can understand the meaning of this bunch of zeros and ones. And the computer will take those zeros and one and will translate it into an image so you can understand, and you say, oh, now I know what you mean. You see, they're not even letters. There are only zeros and ones that are changed into a language, because a 001 may be an A in English, but in Spanish, it's probably another vowel. You see? So if we can understand that the intent is the original form of the original movement, then we can understand that what we have perceived through the physical brain based on a memory of that reality that we did experience in the spiritual world and brought back to memory, if it's brought back to memory, then you said, yes, something happened. If it's not brought to memory, for all I care, nothing happened. You see? But when it comes back to memory, how is it going to come back? In zeros and ones? I don't think so. It doesn't work that way, you see? I'm going to receive that intent with a physical structure, a physical something, a physical being, or a physical space, or a physical environment that can make me understand that I was in a place of peace. And I felt drawn. You see how language works? I feel drawn into this perceptive environment where I feel compelled to move towards it. You see? And I might have a spiritual being relaying a message. It's not your time, or everything is gonna be okay, or do you want to come back? But an image has to be created. There has to be enough energy for that image to come to mind. You see? Let me give you an example. And I hope this helps you and everybody else here. If you close your eyes right now and I ask you to think of your mother, of your father, you're going to be closing your eyes. You're not going to be seeing the physical body, but you're going to get the essence. And if you get that essence, you will know where that essence is coming from. You see? And then you can say, yes, I can feel it. You see? It comes to mind. It comes to mind, but you don't have the physical body. You see? Because there's no, like I explained so many times, the physical plane of reality has everything to do with matter. In the spiritual world, matter does not matter because it's non-existent. You see? So yes, perception, the way I came up with that idea was through the computer, so people can understand and can relate to it, because that's the world we're living in right now. Computers, cell phones, tablets, I mean, you name it, everything is electronic. So every single image that we know that comes from a monitor or a screen, on its original form, it's either a binary language, or I think they're updated it to something else, but still a language that cannot be recognized by the human brain.
Do you think, because I've heard this before, that a near-death experience is a doorway to awakening into higher consciousness?
Yes, most definitely. The only problem is, and what's holding people back, is the belief that when they perceive what they perceive, that they believe that they are some place that does not exist. And if you give it a description based on your religious beliefs, for instance, and you hold on to that thought, and you keep it tied to the environment that you understand, then you're gonna have a perception that may not be as accurate as it should be, in order for you to increase your consciousness level, your awakening, your search for higher truth. But there's nothing wrong with that. If the experience that you as an NDEer had took you to believe more into the religion that you believe nowadays, as long as it obeys one law and one rule, which is the law of cause and effect and the golden rule, you're fine, you're okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, when you move to the other side and you understand higher truth through conditionings and knowledge that you were saying, wait a minute, I am not understanding this because this is not what I thought it was. Don't worry about it. You're gonna get there little by little. It's, for example, you've heard of those near-death experiences that people have felt that they have walked through the doorway, or through the pathway, or through a journey with a loved one. If that loved one, who is going to be welcoming you from the other side, understand that your level of understanding is still limited to this understanding that there are beings here in physical body, and there's a doorway and there's a passage, Trust me, you're gonna be walked through that process. Later on, you will understand higher truth. But for now, there's no problem. You'll be okay. You see, so there's nothing wrong to the level of understanding, but at least one thing every single NDEer have is the understanding that there is life after death. How they perceive it, that's another story. But the fact that they do understand, because they already been there, that there is life after death, that by itself is good enough for me. And if it's good enough for me, it should be good enough for you. So let's live at that, okay?
How does it feel having a thought without the physical body?
Thought, wow. A thought without a physical body. No different. No different. A thought is a thought. A thought comes from your mind. Not from your brain. From your mind. Your mind is one thing, your brain is another. The brain is the receptor. The mind is the self. You see? So now if you ask me, how does it feel being in the self? That's another story. And I will answer, and I'll answer that question for you. Being in the self without a body, it is overwhelming because you have no boundaries. You are a thought. And as you are a thought, and as you recognize as a thought that you have no physical boundaries, you're boundless. And people say, wow, that's great. Well, be careful. Because if you don't have boundaries, how far can you go? And if you think that the law of cause and effect is not going to follow you, you're dead wrong. Because there's a universal law of balance. And if you don't have a physical body, and your mind go crazy, searching and searching and searching and searching and searching, you can get lost. Because you can be perceiving things that you still cannot understand. And as I explained before, higher truth is like math. If you go into algorithm not knowing how to get there, algorithm will mean nothing to you. It is like taking your car for a spin and getting lost through all these new subdivisions in your community. It already happened to me a couple of times. You get lost and you get disoriented. I'm driving. It's like the mind. I'm driving, I'm getting here, there, but it's taking me nowhere. I'm experiencing things that I am more disturbed than amused because I don't understand if I'm going north or south, or if I'm getting closer or far away from home. I don't know. So I get confused, and the confusion creates more confusion and creates more confusion. So it's not that easy. You see, that's going one direction. If I take you to the another direction, I can take you on a vortex with no end. So the mind, you gotta be careful because it's still here on earth. You can be daydreaming all day long. What do you think is gonna happen to you? Not because you are in mind form. That means that you are free to do everything, because it's more complicated than that. It is definitely more complicated than that. Being without a physical body is understanding that you are, in essence, a spiritual being. You know, you probably have heard many times before that someone, I don't know who said it at first, but some other people have been using the same term as we are spiritual beings having an earthly experience. Well, I go a step further and I say we are spiritual beings experiencing life through the senses. See the big difference? We are spiritual beings, but we are bounded to this physical body, so we can experience within our limitations life through the senses. We have 5 senses that we are fully aware of. There is a 6th sense, but you cannot get that 6th sense unless you shut down all those previous 5 senses. And if you have 5 senses and you lack one of them, let's say eyesight, you're going to be experiencing life through those remainder 4 senses. And if I keep shutting them down, you will realize that each remaining sense is actually fine-tuning itself so you can experience life at its fullest within your limitations. You see, it's all about experiencing life. It is like cooking. Nowadays, people make so many weird, different, exquisite dishes just to taste new things, because humanity wants to keep experiencing life through the senses in every single aspect, and they want to keep going further and further and further and further away. If that's good or bad, I'm not here to judge that. I can and I will eventually, but I don't want to bring that subject right now. As it is, we're experiencing life through the senses. So if I walk away from those senses suddenly, abruptly, like it happened through a near-death experience, you're still going to have the reminiscences of those senses, because that's where you were bounded to for so many years. And when you find yourself here in this realm where there's no physical body, you're going to try to relate to this physical body so everything can make sense. So you're going to experience something and then you're going to bring it back with that memory of that physical body. So in my case, for instance, when I had my near-death experience in 1979, I did went into the void. And the void was total darkness. But I knew I was myself. That's the beauty of it. I knew that I was myself. Not with a physical body, but my essence. I knew I was me. I was myself. I didn't turn into a spirit, or I didn't turn into anything else. I was still myself, with the same feelings, the same understanding, the same complexity. Except the fact that I was in a place that I was totally unfamiliar with, yet I did recognize the existence of spiritual beings around me and a higher power. But not as I was taught for it to be. And that was the very confusing aspect of my life, you see. But how to answer your question, how does it feel to be a thought without a physical body? There's no difference, because I am and you are. We are. We are thought, you see.
Maybe this question is going to sound a little bit redundant, but I must ask, is there life after death?
Yes, there is. There is life after death. Just like I explained it to you. I was myself. And every single person who have had a near-death experience can attest to the fact that they were alive. Plain and simple. The near-death experience by itself is the witness, the proof that there is life after death. Because every single one, it doesn't matter where they went or how they felt or what environment they were in or what are their religious beliefs, it doesn't matter. They all know that they are alive. For instance, because I'm writing a new book, which is going to be called NDE, OBE, and Spiritual Experiences, I am actually interviewing other people because I don't want people to think that it's all about me and my experience. I want to see from this person. I want to get it from this other person. I want to understand how this person sees what happened to them and put it on the same table and help them understand, and you understand, what a near-death experience truly is through the perception of others other than me, you see. And this woman gave me her story where she was, I think she was 8 years old, and she was raised without any religion whatsoever. And throughout her near-death experience, she explained to me that she was walking through a trail, grayish in color, and she could not see the other side. I mean, she could not see the end, but she felt compelled to walk through that passage. And it was very calm, and she was looking around and thinking, oh, I wonder where this is going to take me. You see? So there were no theology involved in her line of thoughts, but because she was a young girl, she was given the perception of a pathway so she can feel compelled and move. It is the moving forward what counts. The intent behind the experience is for you to move forward. And yes, it is like a doorway, it is like a password, it is like a bridge for you to get to the other side. But do you think that you're gonna go boom, boom, just like that? I mean, it's gonna scare the living out of you, and you will say, no way, I don't want to go. But if you're given an environment that best suits you to feel compelled to move, then that's the scenario that you're gonna be perceiving through that original intent. You see, like for example, in my near-death experience in 2002, I felt like my physical body was diminishing, while the spiritual body was increasing. And like I said in my book, remember the balloon, the example of a balloon? I feel like I was this balloon full of air, and then you transfer the air from one balloon into the other. When this one is going down, this one is going, this one deflate, this one inflates. Just like that, a transition. But it wasn't a balloon, it was the light. But through the 2002 experience is when I learned what perception is. But it took me those many years until 2011 for me to understand that that experience was for me to learn how perception works. Because in 1979 I went into the void, the total opposite. And in 2002 I went into the light. I was being drawn by the light, you see? But the feeling was the same. I knew the environment, I knew the essence, I knew that was something so closely resemblant to 1979 feeling that I let myself go, you see?
How would you describe the life of Francisco Valentin after you returned from the other side when you were 17 years old?
The life of Francisco Valentin at age 17. I can say one word: isolation. Yes, isolation, because I felt isolated. I felt like no one understands what happened to me. No one believes it. If I'm asked and I start talking, somehow I feel the vibe that people are not caring. They're just asking questions just to ask, but they are not in conform with the answers that I'm giving. And I said, forget it. I'm gonna keep it to myself and take it to the grave. But little did I know. Look at me now. Hear me now. I spent the rest of my life learning on my own, just learning on my own, grabbing every single book I could get my hands on, and this is something that I must bring forward. The way that I learned will teach a lot of people a lot just by this example. I remember my first book was about psychology. It was a psychology book, so I took it, I began to read, and I said, no, this is not it. They had no idea of how the brain works, you see. Nevertheless, I could not pinpoint or put into words what I knew. So I took another book and I began to read, and this is kind of, but not quite, you see. And I kept reading, and then I get this other book, and I said, yeah, this is it. Yeah, this is it. So lesson learned. Don't believe everything that you read. Don't. You gotta be very careful, especially nowadays. See, and still, you cannot believe everything that you hear from other people. And I don't want to put anybody down, but I've heard near-death experiences, stories that I just go, my God, how am I going to help these people understand that that's not it? And do I have the absolute truth? No, I don't. But there are simpler ways to understand things. You see, is for example, like for instance, and I don't want to sound facetious or anything like that, but it's for example when the child asks you for the first time, Dad or Mom, where do I come from? And the first thing they come up with, the birds and the bees. There's going to be a point in time where you have to say, you know what? Let me help you out in a different way. I mean, that doesn't mean that you're going to go with a child and open a book and say, okay, this is this and this is that. You don't take that route. But there are easier ways to help you understand without having to make you believe that things are like the birds and the bees, or the white stock delivering babies. And the way that I can help you understand things is through a perception, so it can be more in alignment with the new understanding that we are more than we think that we are, based on the way we have been taught, that many people are questioning and saying, wait, this is not making sense at all. You see, when you see life as a balance and unbalance, and you see all the complexity of life, you have to use more reasoning to try to understand how things are in reality. But be careful, because you cannot go into the other opposite way and route and go into, like, for example, quantum physics, trying to make a theory out of everything, and that everything is possible. Not everything is possible, my friend. It's, for example, like this physical body, it has its limitations, you see. So is the other realms that are, for example, energy. People say, oh, we are energy. We're not energy. We use energy. We manifest through energy. Energy is a verb. We are the subject. You see, the verb is the movement. The energy is the movement. The self is not energy. The self is you, me, I am, you are, we are. You see? But the moment that we say we are filling the blank, that becomes creation. That's become separate. See? So you are the self. You are not the verb. The verb is the movement. You see? Vibration, energy, creation. So the physical world has everything to do with creation, but the spiritual world has everything to do with the origin of life. So what is the origin of life? Everything that is before the physical plane of reality. You see? Energy is so subtle that it doesn't even have an atom, a particle, a vibration. You see? Up to the point where there's no vibration, and then is the self. You see? But I can't explain all that and make it a whole in just one interview. It's impossible. I have to take you through math, then adding and subtracting to multiplying and dividing, then use algebra so you can get there and understand the whole concept little by little. I'm telling you, for example, there are algorithms, but how to get there, that's another story. How to get to that understanding, that's another ball game. Yes, there is, but how to get there, that you have to understand layer by layer by layer by layer. You see, this is not something that you can learn overnight. Look at me, it took me over 35 years. And now that I get it, now it's making sense. And that's my work, to help you understand what I did throughout 35 years, going through the experiences that I've gone without you having to go through those experiences yourselves. You see, that's my work. And I hope you understand my point of view, and this time, please, this time without theological ties. Without theological ties this time around.